Hi everyone, Mike White here. Welcome to this week's blog post. I want to start this off by saying that some of this is poking fun at the industry and some of the comments that are out there and some of the things that I receive on social media or see in social media. And so we're poking fun at it, but there's a grain of truth and maybe more in what we're about to do today. But I just want to remind you going into this weekend that the bond market closes early on Friday. It's closed on Monday for 4th of July, which means you've got a very long weekend where the markets can do whatever they will do. So be really cautious if you've got loans out there and the number is workable for your customer. I strongly suggest making sure that you look at your pipeline and things are locked before you get into this long weekend. If the customer wants to float, they float. And that's their prerogative, but I would just look at this market and say, we're closing early on Friday. We're going to open again on Tuesday. It's a long time to be hanging out there, especially if you've got somebody in a precarious position. It's always better to be safe than sorry, but we're all adults here. So let's make sure that we just understand that. I put that out there for you to at least contemplate. So I call this week's blog post asking for a friend. And I'm really doing is putting these questions out there to provoke some thought for you, the reader, you, the listener, to be just thinking about the reality of your market and to be able to correctly answer or to respond to questions that come up or things that people say as a result of some of the information or misinformation or some of the concepts or some of the thoughts of people in the marketplace, on social media, those that we've talked about who thrive and make a living by generating clicks and views on their material as opposed to because they're providing exceptional content. So I call it asking for a friend. And so first question is asking for a friend. The government says we aren't in a recession and they don't see one coming. Is that true? Well, technically, I guess the answer is a combination of yes, no, and or not yet. While the first quarter GDP numbers were once again revised to the worse, they originally started out in the first read to be a negative 1.5, and the final read for the first quarter is 1.6 of negative growth. And it's generically or generally accepted that 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth constitutes a recession. That's not really the technical reason that a technical recession can be declared for a number of other factors, but it's widely accepted that 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, are deemed to be a recession. We're not going to get the first read on the second quarter of this year, the one that we're concluding today, until July 28th. But there are many people who have revised their numbers and are thinking that either GDP is very small, 0, or negative. And if it is a negative number, that would trigger what would be deemed as an acceptable condition to be declared a recession. And again, remember this information or these people who are saying that we're not in a recession or giving you some of this content are the same people that told you inflation was transitory and that it was nothing to worry about as we sit here at 8.5%. So take it with a grain of salt, but this is something that you might want to just, again, Google search it and look at the information that comes up so you're prepared. Next one, asking for a friend. I hear there's a housing bubble and I should wait to, a while because both housing prices and interest rates should be coming down. And I should wait until I buy. Is that a good idea? Well, to be honest with you, since my crystal ball isn't working at the moment and I don't have the ability to look into the future and tell you what's going to happen. Here's what I can tell you about what I can see about housing and mortgage rates. Well, home appreciation is certainly slowing down. They're projecting that year over year, we're going to see about a 5% gain in housing prices from April 2022 to April 2023. And while that's off the, last year's close to 20% appreciation, a 5% appreciation rate is pretty nice. It's sort of been deemed to be the sweet spot of home values. And the other thing that you want to take into consideration is the fact that home prices, are one of those things where it's not in a bubble. When rents are going up 14% year over year, that 14% is growth on a payment number. It's not in a value number. And so what you're dealing with is, ostensibly, since most leases are for a year, they're growing at 14%. Well, there's no cap on future rent. And you have to ask yourself, are you comfortable with 100% interest on an uncapped rental increase? Because that's what you're dealing with. And as far as properties and whatever go, where are people going? If rents are going up and the payments on those rents are going up at 14%, housing prices are certainly going up and interest rates are certainly going up. But even now, where we sit, look at the historic record of where interest rates tend to be. 5%, 5 or 6% interest rates are still, within the historic average of where the market is. And in many cases, you can only go back, you can look back, 15 years and see rates that were, well into 6% and higher, beyond that. And many people went out and bought their homes, and, they did what they did. They were looking at it, as we always do, based on payment. Remember, and I say this all the time, mortgages are, mortgage payments and people who are being qualified for mortgage loans are not really qualified for a dollar amount. We all know to put together a pre-approval or to get somebody approved or qualified for a loan, we take into consideration the overall payment. People are approved for a monthly payment. Yes, the largest piece of that is principal and interest for the most part. And yes, interest rates have gone higher. But if you calculate that payment against what those rent increases are, or if you calculate that payment into what people's incomes are, and again, incomes didn't stay static. Incomes have risen. While they have not risen as quickly as the cost of rent or the cost of housing or interest rates, rent goes up and goes up the entire amount. Interest rates and housing prices are only reflected as a partial piece of the total payment, number one. And even if they go up higher than what your percentage of income is, you're only using a fraction of your income. In many cases, a quarter to a third of your income is dedicated toward your housing payment. So those are the things that you have to look at. And while, yes, it does cost more, so does gasoline and food and appliances and just about everything else that we consume. When you're in a better than 8% inflationary, period, the cost of everything is going up. And so the nice part about buying your house, especially with a fixed rate loan, is at least you've locked in the price of your house and you've locked in the biggest part of your monthly mortgage payment. So the last part about this is I'm asking for a friend. Is it true that 40% of all homes in the United States don't have a mortgage, and that for those that do have a mortgage, the average equity position in those homes is $185,000, and that foreclosures are at a 40-year low? Yes, it's absolutely true. So again, take this information, look it up for yourself, have the information handy, be able to show people where you got it. Part of this process is being able to do that simple thing like Google search the question and see what the responses are. Because again, it's really important that you're aware of what's going on and be able to answer these questions when people come up and say these things based upon fact, but also based upon what's going on in your market. How do these national stories and these general questions impact what happens in your backyard, the prices of your homes? What do those payments go up? What are the rents doing? All of those things, while they may be national news, they have local impact, and you need to be aware of both of those things. So have yourself a great 4th of July weekend. Always, if you have questions or comments, it's Mike, imtcoaching.com. Have a great holiday. We'll talk to you again next week. Take care.